Hey, South, I'm going to read to you Chapter 7 called Imminent Extermination. The gold-hilted sword shimmered in the morning light as George swiped the air with the weapon. The knight went through a series of attack motions, then stopped, a bit winded, and grinned at Kenny. The River Stone stomachache finally pushed the breath out of the boy. Dizzy and lightheaded, he dropped his mug on the chessboard, drowning the pieces in a fizzy brown deluge. In a blink, George dropped the sword and caught Kenny as the lad was about to topple backward off his stool. "Little Squire," he cried as he helped Kenny up, "are you okay?" The young rabbit caught his breath, and his eyes slowly focused on the kindly, brave face of George. This codger was certainly not at all what he expected. He was a knight, a royal guardsman, and a dragon slayer. And if the stories George had shared with him over the years were even half true, then he had to warn Graham immediately. "I've got to go," Kenny said as he headed for the door. The knight stopped him. "But you just got here. Are you okay?" "Is it—" George paused, kneeling down to look the lad in the eyes. "Are you worried? About me?" "Because you don't have to be, son. Once I get suited up and on that hilltop, this monster will be slain in moments. I know how to handle these devils. You can even watch or help if your parents allow it." It was too much for the lad. Kenny dashed out of the shop without even a goodbye. He pedaled as fast as his legs could go from the center of town. His mind was so full of worry that he didn't even notice that the crowd was now much larger than it had been previously. In fact, villagers were lining up on either side of the street. George had been his hope, and his only hope of figuring out what to do with the dragon. If there was anyone in the village outside of his family who would understand Graham wasn't a threat, it would have been George. And now he was preparing to come up and slay his best friend, and with the orders from the king himself, he could not follow them. Then his mind flashed to the newspaper headline and what the paper boy had said. Was this mess somehow all his fault? Had he verified old Pop's story by declaring what a real dragon was like during his book report? As he pedaled even faster, the gears in Kenny's mind clicked and whirred, trying to find a solution for his friend. Perhaps Graham could hide out in the cave for a little while until this blows over, he said, thinking out loud. I bet Mom and Dad would let him live in our barn if he had to, even though it is a little tight. He was almost to the top of Shepherd's Hill now. Graham will know what to do, he said as he hopped off his bike. He found the dragon examining himself in an old full-length mirror, rubbing something onto his skin with a tattered flannel shirt. "Kenny, have a look at this," he said with that familiar toothy grin. "Your mom gave me some floor wax that polishes my scales up nicely. Look at this sheen. It really brings out the iridescence in my complexion." Kenny was panting, completely out of breath. "Graham, you have to go. George is coming to fight you." "George is coming to what? Why? What's he upset with me for? I didn't damage one single page of his books." "Okay, well, I did scorch the cover of that silly bestiary a little, but it totally had me in stitches. Honestly, I don't know where some writers get their crazy ideas from. A camel pard? Of all the—" "Graham!" Kenny interrupted. "He's a knight, a dragon slayer who works for the king." The drake hissed, looking at the young rabbit for a second, then resumed polishing his scales, though in a much more frenetic fashion. "I thought he was your friend. I thought we had a lot in common. A fellow book lover, a fellow connoisseur of the finer things in life, not some courtly bane sent for my imminent extermination." He threw the rag down on the ground, walked toward his cave entrance, and began tidying. "He's not like that," Kenny squeaked as he followed the dragon. Kindly old George had been his friend for as long as he could remember. "He's a good guy. He taught me how to play chess, and he introduced me to all these good books we've been enjoying." The dragon kept his back turned to the lad. Kenny's heart started beating faster and faster. "What are we going to do?" he asked. "I'm not going to do anything," the dragon replied in an icy tone. "As I told you before, that was the sport of all my brethren, not me. That's why I'm still here today, and they are all gone. Slaying the knights like your good friend, George. You tell him there will be no battle between us. No bloody Roman holiday. I won't have it." "He has his orders from the king himself," Kenny pleaded, "and the whole town is gathering together for this." "King Schming," Graham turned to face the boy. His eyes were glowing and whiffs of smoke were rising out of his nostrils. What does he know? When was the last time he sat down and talked to a dragon? Instead, the cadger sent some carking varlet up here to do the dirty deed, without even a hello? "How are you today? Mind if I cut your throat?" Graham calmed down, picked up his rag, and began polishing himself again. "Now, if George wants to come up for some ginger beer and a good game of chess, well then, I'd be quite happy to see him and let his shady past stay where it belongs. But no weapons or pointy things that he can stick, hurl, or jab with me." Kenny slumped his shoulders and looked down. "I'm afraid it's not going to happen that way." "Little bantling," said Graham with a sigh as he stopped admiring himself in the mirror. He bent low enough to look Kenny right in the eyes. "Don't worry, I just know you will think of something to make this right. Come on now. You're the well-read, smart one, remember?" Flabbergasted, Kenny said nothing. The dragon resumed polishing his scales and admiring himself in the mirror, as he was without a care in the world. His mind whirling, Kenny grabbed his bicycle and left. Normally, the arduous ride up Shepherd's Hill meant a fast-paced, exciting ride down, but the boy simply walked his bike back toward home. The high noon sun had warmed the soft ground, and there was a gentle, lazy breeze whispering through the leaves as he made his way down the hill. Dragonflies and butterflies flitted all about, even when it lighted on his handlebars, but Kenny didn't notice any of this. "What on earth am I going to do?" he said to himself. Both his friends were to be pitted against each other in a battle to the death. Who would win? Would Graham just lie there, refusing to fight and be slaughtered? Or would George, much older now than he was back in his heyday, be burnt to a crisp? The Riverstone feeling had taken over his entire body, and he swallowed hard to hold back the river itself that welled up in his eyes. Parking his bike on the porch, he was startled by his father bursting out the front door. "Kit, hurry, boy, you're just in time," his dad exclaimed. His mother strolled out of the house behind him, taking a kerchief around her head. "What's going on? Where are we going?" Kenny replied. For a moment, his parents' excitement distracted him from the heavy responsibility he was feeling. "There's a parade in town. We just got word," his mom answered as he hopped aboard their sheep-drawn cart. "It's supposed to be quite a procession. Your father hasn't been this excited since you made that apple crumb pie for my birthday. Now come on, son," his dad said, slapping the spot right next to him on the driver's bench. "I'll even let you drive." "You don't understand," Kenny said. "Why do you think they're having a parade?" Both his parents blinked and looked at each other. "An early celebration of the annual Corncob Festival?" his mom guessed, though it sounded more like she was asking the question. "Pig wrestling?" his dad added. "Also, and I'm not so sure, is this a trick question sort of way?" "You guys haven't been in town for a while," said Kenny. "This is all about Graham. I'm sure of it." "Really?" his father replied. "I don't know about that." And he paused for a moment, mulling it over. "What would the parade be for?" "Why don't we go into town and see for ourselves?" his mother suggested. Kenny sighed and slowly climbed up onto the cart with his parents. It seemed that as much as he might try to escape it, he found himself heading right back into Round Brook, and right back into his worst fears. What is Kenny going to do? Thank you, South. Hope you enjoy Chapter 8 coming up next.